you reverse the equation and we talk about waste, people really hate to waste time, energy, and money, right? How do you feel when you've wasted time, energy, money? That's the pain and that's the problem that we solve first.
Everything leads to growth with the National Association of Sales Professionals. The Leads to Growth podcast with the National Association of Sales Professionals provides in-depth discussions, sharing the best sales, prospecting, influence, and communication skills, as well as sales training techniques to take your professional sales career to the next level.
All right, welcome to another Leads to Growth podcast. Rick and I are back with NASP, the National Association of Sales Professionals, and we've got some awesome guests with us today. We've got Megan and AJ. How are you? Great to see you from Praxis Metrics.
Hi from Austin.
Ooh, loving Austin, right? Absolutely. So Megan and AJ are a dynamic, engaged couple who are business partners, adventure partners, and life partners. They've scaled their business and life by being data-driven. I know Rick loves that. In everything that they do. They figured out how to run their business remotely, automate most of their life, and keep their bodies in fit and healthy, stay productive, grow their relationship, all while traveling the world and getting back with bank accounts that were heftier than when they left. That's a beautiful thing. They founded Praxis Metrics, where they help companies eliminate waste and make better decisions from their data, resulting in exponential growth. Together, they've leveraged sales and marketing to attract new clients and have doubled their business every month for the past 6 months. And they've had a lot of fun doing it, I can tell you that. Welcome, Megan and AJ. Good to see you.
Thanks for having us. We're excited today.
Always a pleasure.
Awesome. So I got the chance to hear Megan and AJ speak in the past, and really kind of blew my mind. I've heard the concept of micromanaging your life, and it always just sounded so daunting and evil to me, right? And just to see the way these two live and to see how really every increment of their lives they're measuring, and they're using this to make it more fun and to better their lives and to better the people around them. So I was just fascinated and was really excited to have them on today. So I would love to open the whole conversation with y'all just telling us first off, how'd you get into data? How did you start measuring these little things? And how has it opened up your life to live this beautiful fantasyland world that you live in every day?
Great question.
Go ahead.
Well, we're both very data-driven in two very different ways, right? So I love to see the numbers laid out, and I see a path once I see the numbers, we got to go do this. I can just see that. That's a visionary part of mine. I'm not too fond of spreadsheets. My eyes glaze over after about 12 minutes.
12 seconds.
12 seconds. But I see the value in it. I love data and I love what it can do. And even I'm proof that you don't have to be a data scientist or a complete analyst or math nerd. We say that openly. We love nerds. We're nerds. But you don't have to be that detailed to be able to appreciate and use data. And then Megan.
Well, and before we move on to me, you were very, very data-driven in the past in a lot of different ways. So AJ tracks everything. So we've got all of these apps on our phones, and AJ has 3 times the normal amount of humans, and he tracks everything. So when we first met, he was tracking all of his fitness stats, everything that he ate, everything that he drank, every aspect of his health. He was very data driven. And so that allowed him to be, sub 10% body fat and, and have all these goals that he achieved in health because he was data driven that way. And then again, in business, he was very data driven from being marketing. He was in marketing. He ran a marketing agency. And so he was able to look at conversion analytics, funnel analytics, and then know what action to take from that in order to optimize those funnels. I came from a totally different background. I came from knocking doors and selling encyclopedias door to door for 3 years.
In a Google world.
Yeah, this wasn't in the 80s. And so I was data driven from a different perspective, because it was literally every door that I would go to, it was a split test. It was determining, hey, if I smile like this, are they going to let me in? Or if I'm more serious, are they going to let me in?
Mm.
Or, right. And every door was a different split test. And then I'd get back to the car and I'd have little tally marks. I had a little notepad or sticky notes on my steering wheel. And every day I'd have all these different variables and I'd do these little task or tally marks on it. And so I was data driven in a different perspective. And my background, like, I love math. I wanted to be a calculus teacher, so I'm a true nerd. And so we had very, very different perspectives on data. But what was a unifying factor is that, you know, when we started working together, we realized that most people don't use data at all in any aspect. And really, before we go on, because people probably have already tuned out or turned off because they're like, ooh, data.
That is very possible.
And we should have started out with this, is data is simply a synonymous word with information. Data is information. The more information you have, the more knowledge you can attain, and then the more wisdom you can gather, right? But without information, you can't do any of those things. So information can be, you know, you can get gut information. You can have that intuition feeling, and that's information. But then you can also have statistical information and, you know, geographical information. You can have demographic information, and that in our world is simply data. But for everybody else, they don't get that's all it is.
That's a great point. You know, if you really think about it, we didn't have this information in the past, right? Data wasn't collected. There wasn't all these systems and things to measure all the data. So we were able to make decisions somehow with our head in the sand, you know, without the information. Now it's out there, it's in our face, and now we're forced to make decisions with this new information.
That's right. And it's not going anywhere. There's only going to be more and more data. Every time I memorize the amount of data that's created every day, I see another report that changes. So I stop memorizing it. But basically, like, we're constantly tracking, and it's really not about the amount of data. It's how to ask the right questions, assimilate the data, put it and let the data tell a story that helps you either achieve your goal in business or life, get the results that you want in business or life. And overall, like, you can really help make a happier, more successful life just by learning how to ask the right questions and assimilate the data and let go of the rest. Pareto's principle, like, extreme.
You mentioned that. You mentioned one thing that I love that you said: eliminate waste. It was in the bio. And that seems like, as you say, what are the right questions to ask? And where am I wasting time, right? The most valuable asset that we have is time. And so that seems like one of the first questions you really want to ask. So when you asked yourself, what did you find out when you first started looking at all this information and then asking yourself that question?
Ooh, great question.
See, you know me, and so you know what I'm going to answer. So he's going to embarrass me. So basically, yeah. So as a salesperson, you know, you need to optimize the amount of people you see, your conversions, right? You hear that stuff all the time, but, you know, you can only optimize so much. So what you have to do is you have to look at what you're wasting, and wasting time is really one of the biggest things that every salesperson has to face, whether it's wasting time doing non-income producing activities like paperwork, like market research. Like, these are all things that are part of the job, but also can be used as procrastination techniques but to get you to not make that next call or not talk to that prospect, right? And so that's all data. Where you spend your time is one of the biggest pieces of data that is not tracked. And so we actually have this thing that we challenge everybody to do, a 2-week time audit. I mean, you think about your budget. Like, if you were to put a budget on your finances, you can't just say, oh, I'm going to start saving $300 a month if you don't have $300 extra to save, right? You have to go back in time. You have to look at where that money went in the past in order to say, well, where can I stop spending money on coffee? I spend $100 on coffee a month, $100 on, let's say, manicures a month, and $100 on hair. Okay, if I stop doing those three, I can then take $300 into savings. And it's a very simple equation, but you have to look backwards in order to plan forwards and in order to optimize and to have these positive outcomes. But then nobody does that with their time. And time is the most valuable resource because it's the only resource that's non-replenishable. And so we don't look back at where we spent our time. Yeah, we've got a calendar that has appointments on there, but what happened in between?
Right.
And are you keeping those appointments, really? Because when people say, oh, I know where my time goes, we've had so many people say, I don't need to do that time out. I totally know what's going on. We force them to do it. And they're the first ones to say, holy moly, I cannot believe I spent this much time doing this, this, and this. Now I know I got to change this. So when you reverse the equation and we talk about waste, people really hate to waste time, energy, and money, right? How do you feel when you've wasted time, energy, money? That's the pain and that's the problem that we solve first.
Yeah.
And we're still good at convincing ourselves that we're productive, right? Like that 15 minutes you waste in between the calls, you forget about it already, and you're like, oh no, I've been on calls all day. No, you weren't.
No, you haven't. And that's the embarrassing thing is, when, and I don't mean to call everybody a liar, but they're lying to themselves. It's a lack of awareness because they don't see the information.
Sure.
Nobody ever tracks 24 hours and sees it on like in front of them. And once you do, so we challenge everybody to track.
I have an app for that.
Okay. AJ has an app for that.
I'd love to hear about that later, buddy.
But when you start tracking this, imagine 24 hours in every day. People are like, oh, well, today wasn't a normal day, right? Oh, I had this fire come up. Oh, it was like, oh, the client called me and ruined this. Oh, my mom called, or, oh, my dog had to go to the emergency room. Whatever it is, there's always something. Every day is not normal. So you have to look at a big time span to really normalize data. And that's just a rule of thumb. So if I look at today and I were to track every 15 minutes of today, it would give me a good idea as to where my day goes. And it may have been 4 hours in client appointments, 2 hours in my emails, 1 hour like of just lost time where I literally did nothing, just like in between tasks where I was thinking about something. And the next thing I know, it was like 10 minutes went by. I'm like, crap. Where am I? What am I doing? And then, an hour of, oh, well, I was driving to and from meetings. It's 15 minutes every to and from. So that takes up an hour. And then I've got, I took lunch and then I had to run to dry cleaning, right? So you add that all up in a day and then you do it another day, every 15 minutes, because 15 minutes, a lot can happen in 15 minutes. But if you aggregate it 15 minutes, that's usually painful enough that we don't need to go more granular. And then over 2 days, it's still not normalized. So we take a whole week, but each week is different. So 2 full weeks is what we have found to be the minimum that really tells the true story. So then you can you see the full 2 weeks of data divided out by, 14 days, and it gives you an average for each day. How much on average am I spending on these tasks? And it'll tell a really, really true picture. And it's a very harsh picture. It's one that people don't want to see. It's like when you open the cell phone and your camera's on, you're like, I don't like the angle of myself, right? That's what this is. It's like, it's the truest version of you, and you stare at it with a reflection and you're like, ooh, I don't like that. I had an hour every day on social media, or in my case, I don't care about social media. Mine was Netflix. I was like every day at 5 o'clock, I'd be like, oh, day's done. Now I'm going to go and cook dinner. But while I'm cooking dinner, Netflix is on. Then while I'm eating dinner, Netflix is on. And then after dinner, I have to unplug, which means Netflix is on until like 10 p.m. And then that's 5 hours of Netflix time a day where I could be like, imagine 8 hours a day is a full-time job.
Right.
5 hours a day is a part-time job. Like I could have learned a new language, a new skill set. I could have doubled my business, right? In those extra 5 hours a day. Or I could have said, you know what, that's time I want to spend with my family.
Right.
With my friends, going out wake surfing, whatever it may be, right? And we don't realize that the information, the data around your time tells a very, very powerful story and can drastically impact your sales career. Because I've coached people who we did this, and after 2 weeks, like I had this guy say, that's it, I don't have time for this call. I was like, I'm sorry, what? You don't have time for this call? And he was like, well, after doing this for 2 weeks, he said, I realized that in an 8-hour day, there was only actually 2.5 hours of income producing activity time. The rest of the time was chatting with employees. It was chit-chatting about, office stuff. It was going through email. It was stuff that could have been delegated to executive assistants, to people in support roles, to project managers, whatever it may be. And by 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, he cut down to where he was only working 2 days a week, because he was like, well, I'm actually only working 2 days a week. So why not just do it all in 2 days and take the other 3 days? He was 63 years old, so he's like close to retirement anyway. He's like, now, instead of wasting 5 days a week, 40 hours in the office, I am now doing 2 days a week of work, which I was before. And he increased his income by 73% and cutting back down to 2 days a week. Because when he was in there, he said, nobody emails me, nobody talks to me, nobody does anything. I am in hustle mode, focused, doing the sales producing activities that I need to do. And that was it. And the data told a story, and then he changed the story because he changed the data.
Isn't that great?
Focus on your IPAs, right?
Down just 20%.
All right, Rick. I know Rick's drooling over here about the data. Rick, I know you had a question yearning for us.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'd love to ask a question. So in this, like you said, this world of now we've got too much data coming from a world of not enough data. What for the salespeople and the sales leaders listening to the podcast today? What are some actionable steps? What are some actionable takeaways people can do today with the abundance of data in all the different forms that they have?
And before you get to that too, I think also too, I want to cover sales leaders. I know you guys are the dashboard king and queen over there, and Rick is a big fan of dashboards as well. You should see this guy on HubSpot. He's a whiz. But we had some conversations where you had built some great experience working with some dashboards for some sales groups. Could you share a little bit about your experience working in the sales world and maybe some tools that you have for the sales leaders out there on exactly what Rick said? Like, we got all this data in our CRM. There's data in our social media. There's data coming from everywhere. What do we do with all this data?
Yeah. And
on average, we took a poll, and it's about, on average, small companies, salespeople, freelancers have about 15 to 18 different pieces of technology that do not talk to one another. It's a lot of different technologies where you've got to constantly be wasting time pulling all that together. So we definitely have lots of tools. I think maybe when we're sharing the stream, probably start off like, what are some of the things they can do, and then get into the tools?
I'm gonna start with this.
Great. Yep.
So starting with Rick's question, so metrics mapping is the answer to that. Like, there is an overabundance of data, and a lot of the data is just, we call it vanity metrics. It's like, hey, yeah, it would look pretty on a graph, but what does it tell you? Does it tie to any of your business goals? If not, then you're just wasting time going and analyzing that data, right? So what we do is we start out with metrics mapping. And this is something that can be done in a simple Excel spreadsheet. You don't need fancy tools for this. It can be done on a whiteboard, which is where we do it with all of our clients. And we start with the business goal. We know every sales organization has business goals. So we start with those business goals, and then we say, so what questions do you have about those goals? Or what are some questions that you would ask in order to see if you are on track to hit that goal, right?
And even for those companies that are already kind of further along, it's what are the business questions you've been dying to answer that you have not been able to because of lack of data, systems, technology, whatever, right? So those kind of those pain points.
So it's taking those goals, breaking them down into more granular questions that are specific, and then turning those into measurable KPIs. We all know SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, have a time frame. Well, a metric is no different than that, right? It has to be specific. And so when you whittle this down into these questions and turn them into actual metrics over time, or cohort analysis, or just, total values or percentages, whatever it may be, this then allows you to say, okay, so these are the metrics that will move my business. Not what the Salesforce reports say in the built-in system, because Salesforce is made for hundreds and thousands of sales organizations, but you suffer from terminal uniqueness, which means everything in your life is 100% different. And so it's never going to be 100% right for you, right? Sure. These KPIs, these key performance indicators and metrics that you create are the ones that are relevant to your business because they're tied to the questions that are tied to your goals. So ignore all of that other stuff and focus on these metrics. Now, what normally happens is we find what these metrics are. And like AJ said, all of a sudden they're like, well, I don't have that data. And we're like, great. So you've got an overabundance of vanity data that tells you nothing. And the key stuff that you really need to know, you don't have at all. And so what that allows people to do is then to know where the holes are. So we take those and we say, okay, so is it tracking in any of your current technologies?
Where does the data live, right?
Yeah.
Where specifically is the data? So it's a little bit of a painful process, almost like the time audit, but we're like auditing, okay, we've gotten clear on this. Let's go deeper and figure out where specifically. Is it a spreadsheet? Is it buried in an API in a totally different, is it in HubSpot? Like,
is it on
making
sticky notes
people
in an
go
office
and
room?
look for it. Sometimes they can't answer there.
Hiding under the bed somewhere.
Bob in IT, and they got to go to that person. And right, it's literally getting it all mapped out, which is why we call it a map. So this part is really, 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 really key.
So yeah, so going back to your question, like, so there's an overabundance of data, but that doesn't mean it's the right data. So this is how you determine what's important to your organization and what would help you guys grow. But in addition, sometimes people don't know what the questions, they don't know what they don't know. And so they're not, so they'll ask for guidance on, well, what kind of questions should I be asking, right? And so that's where we'll go and we'll help them. But we'll also put together, so we also kind of create some pre-built dashboards that will answer 80% of the questions. And then that other 20% that needs customization, that's where we walk through that metrics mapping process. And so we'll go through and we'll say, so what are the correlating factors that you want to know? And are those being tracked or are they not? So for example, we had a client who said, well, I want to be able to know if it matters what clients get assigned to what salespeople.
Ooh.
Wouldn't that be interesting to know, right?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And so what you have to know in order to get any data on that is, well, what are the characteristics or the quality of the leads and the characteristics or the quality of the salespeople that might have a correlating factor? Is it, and if you're going B2C or B2B, it's totally different. So we'll say B2C. Is it their demographic data? Is it their annual income? Is it their physical location? Is it, right? And these become these toggles of variables that then you could go in and see. And I will actually do something like this. Let me just show you. So if you're tracking things like that, then we can put them in toggles and just say, hey, look, what is my lifetime value of my customers if John gets them? And this John would be a variable here. And it would be like, well, John yields a $72,000 lifetime value or $72 lifetime value, depending on your business. But let's look at how Susan does. Susan needs help. What about if AJ gets them? Well, AJ is doing well. And then, so all of these labels over here can be different variables. So this could be, hey, how does AJ close when it's a client who has red hair? How does he close when it's a client who does over $1 million in revenue? How does he, when they're female? Ooh, he's good with the ladies. Let's send them all over, right? But all of this just goes to show that the variables here become extremely important in understanding the trends. Otherwise, you're just saying, well, here's the total.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't answer why.
Sure.
Right. And so when it comes to tracking any sort of metric, you don't want to just report on actuals. You want to get insights out of it to say, why did this happen? And then what can we do to then change things in the future? Well, I would then start sending the ladies to AJ and I would start sending the nerds to Megan, right? And that's what we do. We've learned, we've split tested. He does well with the ladies. I do well with the nerds. We're good.
There we go.
But if this isn't tracking, that's the biggest thing. So if we could give one piece of actionable advice, it's to go through and ask these questions, map out your KPIs, and then see where the holes are. Are you not tracking what you need to be tracking? Because the thing is...
And are your people putting it in HubSpot or in
Salesforce?
Are you doing it correctly? Are they just quickly doing quick add, name, email, done? Do they need to be checking things off, right? There's little tiny details we find in that data entry part, if it's not all online, can be the difference between clean data and bad data. And you don't want to be making decisions on bad data.
Yeah.
That's a great point that I'd love just to put a little thumbtack in. Data entry, right? This is like one of the key factors of this piece. I know Rick and I have had several discussions over, of just going in and setting up a new HubSpot for a client. And going into the process and saying, well, look, we can put all the properties there, but if you're not completing all the boxes, if you're not completing all the little areas and entering all the information in correctly, then what good is it for us?
Yes, and that is clutch. And here's the thing. Every company that we work with, every single one has holes in their data.
Yeah.
And the reason being, the number one reason is because they don't know the value of the data. The salespeople have not been taught why that one field is important. And they know that if they don't enter in that one field, nobody's looking at it, right? So what's the point?
And it's just one number at the time of action, right? It's just one little box as opposed to the vastness and the usefulness of the data down the road.
And that's what they don't see. So what we do with every single client is we say this whole freaking process of this metrics mapping, do it with the executive team, do it with the management team. But this 1000% has to be translated to this sales team, the people on the streets, the people making the interactions. They're the ones that are constantly getting all of this data. And then they don't think that the managers care about it. They don't think that the managers are taking action from it. So why on earth would they waste time entering in these fields if it's not yielding any insights? So it's a lose-lose, and it's all because of a lack of communication and a lack of action. But if this is shared and the people then know, hey, look, when I enter this one field into HubSpot, this one into Infusionsoft, this into here, I know that in 1 week, I will be able to have this report that shows all of this aggregate data and tells me this awesome story that will help me make more money, that will help me close more deals.
Yep.
So sales leaders out there, share what you're learning from the data that sales professionals are putting into the tools and show the appreciation.
Democratize
Take it even further. Here's a quick tip. All the sales leaders, sales managers out there, do this. Put it up on a screen, up where everybody can see it. And not all the financials, of course, just the basic information that the salespeople need, because you already know they're competitive. But when they start seeing that their data appears up there and we democratize that data, just you see what will happen. They now know the end result. They can see, everybody can see that, and they want to win. You better believe they're going to start putting data in right.
So we do that with like random fields, like, oh, hey, at the end of the day, like we had a range, like a gun range. And they were like, well, the salespeople at the retail counter are not entering in the data. So we put up a screen and they were able to then see and say, oh, at the end of the day, Jonathan has only 2% of his fields entered. And it's a competition. And anybody below the line of 50% knows that in the morning, Susie's coming and saying, why? Why is this 2%, right? And it becomes that accountability, because if it's just data for data's sake, then screw it. But if it's important information, let's share it with everybody, and everybody will hold each other accountable.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it goes with everything that we talk about. It's about alignment. It's about aligning the vision, the purpose, and why we're doing something, right? Especially in this day and age when you're asking the people who are doing, like you said, they're on the streets. They're doing the work. They're out there doing the hustle, the grind. They're out there talking to 100 people a day. And maybe that person's not doing business with them, but finishing the data entry, finishing the work, they've really got to get that buy-in. And we always talk about too, how are you incentivizing people? Yep. And so I love how you made it a commission, a competition aspect, but having an incentive out there around complete entries and data, incentivizing the perfect scores, as you mentioned, the 100% of complete data would be a great strategy as well to continue to collect and have data that's valuable moving forward, right?
Yeah. The one last, one of the biggest pieces of data that sales teams are not tracking that is clutch is in the sales pitches. Are you tracking how far people are getting and where they drop off? So yes, you're tracking won opportunities and lost opportunities, but where specifically did you lose them in your script? So most salespeople do not go by scripts anymore, which is sad, because that is very helpful in determining where things went wrong. But every salesperson usually has some sort of general outline, right? They're going to establish rapport. They're going to, give credibility. They're going to find some pain and some needs. Then they're going to go through and they're going to, solve those pains and the needs with the product. And then they're going to do a price buildup. Then they're going to tell the price, and then they're going to try and close. Like, where in those 7 steps are you losing people? Were they already a no up here or down here, right? And that is clutch for especially sales leaders to be able to go through every single salesperson, because each salesperson has a different strength and weakness. I am a great closer and I am a terrible prospector. So my sales numbers are like very low at the front, right? Whereas he's a great prospector and not as strong of a closer because he's so nice, you know? And so like there's different parts of the actual sales process that are not being tracked. And if they were to be tracked, the efficiency of the organization goes through the roof, because then the salespeople, the managers are able to work with the individual salespeople on their specific weaknesses rather than on general ones as a whole, right?
That's beautiful. Stop screen sharing so we can see your beautiful faces.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. No, I absolutely love that. And I love that you mentioned too, just the sales process. So we look at data and like the vastness, right? This is how we started this conversation. There's so much data and you can get lost in the big data. But when you get down to, Rick and I have this conversation all the time, you know, how many people have you talked to today? How many meetings did you have? How many, it just, you file it down, and this allows us to make those minor adjustments throughout our week to make sure that we're on pace, right? This allows us to make those minor corrections to make sure that, you know, we don't wait till the end of the month or the end of the year and realize, oh, we're behind quota or behind our numbers.
Yep. You can address it early and often, because those projections are extremely easy to do based on trajectory of current numbers. Mm-hmm. Same thing with that sales pipeline. If you know, hey, I had 183 calls, 100 sit downs, 100 appointments set, and then, 30 appointments held, I know that there's a big gap there, whereas normally it's a 50% ratio. So this month I'm going to have to set twice as many because for some reason it's the summertime, people are traveling, right? And that's the other thing is so tracking all of that is so important. It's the first step. You can't analyze data if you don't have the data. Mm-hmm. So tracking those things and then taking the time to go back and look through them. But then you can also use that for projections and goal setting. So instead of saying objectively, oh, I want to earn another 10 grand this year so that I can save up for a wedding or for a vacation or for the down payment on a house, car, boat, whatever. Instead of just setting this arbitrary goal and having an intention, though intentions are great, reverse engineering that based on every single conversion point in your individual sales funnel to then say, oh, in order for me to earn $10,000 extra this year, all I have to do, and this gets reverse engineered back down to day by day. So each day, all I have to do is I have to reach out to 13 more leads. And it makes it so much more obtainable when you have that incremental goal reverse engineered with the data, and it's your data, so you know it's true.
And you have the vision to pull you through to do the extra work in order to get there, right? We always talk about, and through our 6 steps of lasting change, the first thing you do when you want to go through that deception and that hardship that you're going to go through when you make those habit changes in your life, those pattern interrupts, is you need a powerful why and a powerful vision to get you through that. So being able to backtrack and being able to see every step along the way to what you're looking to accomplish, that's beautiful, right? And you know what else I love about it? That the data and the information makes us accountable.
Yes. Makes us accountable. Yep.
Makes us accountable.
Going back to what you were saying,
don't lie.
It would be interesting.
Data don't lie.
Data don't lie.
That's actually, so numbers never lie. They just tell a story that you might not want to hear. That's our little quote.
That's a t-shirt there for sure.
But what's interesting is, I just thought about this because you brought up commissions as well. What if you had your team's numbers so dialed in and you knew their conversion so well that instead of rewarding them on the results, you could base their commission and percentages and their bonuses off of their actions. So it's on the controllables rather than the non-controllables, right? Because there are things that will come up and somebody won't close and it had nothing to do with the salesperson. But if I hit my income producing activities every day, I know that if I hit 193 every day, I will yield X amount at some point this year.
That way we're rewarding the habits and not the results.
Correct.
That encourages behavior. I like that. That's some good stuff. We got to the good stuff at the end. That was nice. Awesome. Well, hey, this has been great. I love this. We had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for all the just the beautiful information and data that you've given us already. AJ, one thing before we go, you mentioned an app, a way that people can start measuring their time. I know it's not your tool, but I know our audience would love for, I think a great actionable step is look, start measuring your own time. This is a perfect way to start. And I want to put it to our audience, our listeners out there, give the time audit 2-week challenge a shot. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So what's the app that we can use, AJ, to support us in this?
So I've got a bunch of different individual apps, but the one I was talking about, one is called A Tracker. So it's on both Android and iPhone. So A Tracker. And the other one is called Life Cycle. Both very, very simple apps. Life Cycle basically tracks where you are all the time. And then you're able to see, okay, overall, here's where my time is. And then you can dive down into it. Now, one of the other things that we both really like, and I have thousands and thousands of check-ins on this, is building habits one at a time. I really like, it's called
Coach.me.
Coach.me. And then a new one called Today, which also works on here. And so you get reminders and all that, but it's so neat to start seeing, I love the quote from Seinfeld when he said, you want to build a new habit, don't break the chain. Once a day, draw it on your calendar. This just creates this fire. There's like literally fire and all your squares get orange. Like you don't want to break that. If you're not drinking for 30 days, you're doing these things. It's that habit tracker that goes along with the time tracking that really builds a lot of momentum for you. So those are three.
It takes the non-quantifiable and quantifies it. So it's just binary. So it's, did I do this or did I not do this today?
Remove the judgment. Remove all the judgment and guilt and just let it, I like that.
Yeah, and so at the end of the day, when we're setting our alarm for the next day, we have this list and it just pops up with all of our habits and we just say yes or no. And it's just check, 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 check. Those are the ones I did today. And then you're able to analyze that and look back and overlay it with other outcomes, right?
Awesome. And if you don't have those apps, they got these things called notebooks.
Yep.
They work real good as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
you guys can email us or they can reach out to us on social
media. Where can our audience follow you and find out more information from you?
Yeah. So I'm at ajyager.com or ajyager.com or just at ajyager. That's AJYAGER.
I'm Megan Connell, MEAGHANCONNELL. And then
Instagram and Facebook. LinkedIn.
And if they've got, questions on more of the resource stuff, they can reach out via email. I'm terrible with social media because I found out how much I waste time on it. So I don't do it anymore. So mine is just email. So MEAGHAN at Praxis Metrics, PRAXIS metrics.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I know our audience is going to love this. Rick, great job, brother. Another great podcast. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you for listening.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Growth. Appreciate it.
Bye.